My name's Aaron, and my tag is a link to Tao. Everyone calls me Tao. I make and design parts for the Nintendo 64 controller. I design new parts that I think will innovate the controller in a way that's useful to specific games as well. So my parents really didn't really want to give me any game system when I was a kid, and I kept asking them for a Nintendo. And when I think I was 9, my my dad was like, "Oh, you're not gonna get one of those," and they ended up surprising me for my birthday, and they got me a Nintendo 64, and I was so excited and I was so surprised, and I really enjoyed playing it since I was a kid. Even as I grew up, I moved on to other systems, and I would play. I moved on to like Wii and then Xbox, and then I had a gaming computer in college. But the entire time while I was playing all those other games, I was secretly wishing that I could be playing it with a Nintendo 64 controller. But back then, there wasn't any hardware to make that happen, and it wasn't really practical. When I specifically remember playing in college, I played a lot of Skyrim, and I really wanted to play it with the Nintendo 64 controller. And I figured out a way to make, Super Smash Brothers Ultimate work with Nintendo 64 controllers recently, and I played that with my friend recently, so that was pretty fun. It was just so different than everything else. I remember playing with, like, NES controllers when I was really little and Super Nintendo controllers. They just fit in the hand so nicely, and I really liked, I played a lot of Zelda when I was younger and Super Smash Brothers, and I really liked how the game fits so well with the controller. A lot of times later on, the games didn't really fit as well. It was like they tried to make a one size fits all controller, but it seemed like back then Nintendo was really designing. They were really trying to make the joystick the proper sensitivity and everything. And I remember when I played Zelda, I just felt so fluid to, like, hop around and, like, dodge enemies and stuff, and I really enjoyed that flow of that I would get from the controller, that I never got in any other game later on. All the parts inside are injection molded plastic, typically ABS. Usually what happens is there's a lot of friction in there, so you have a bowl surface, which is like it's like a surface bearing that takes the pressure of the stick, and it helps to guide the stick in a particular way. And then you have the restrictor gate. The gate is that octagonal structure on the outside of the controller that restricts the movement of the gate. And usually the friction will start to wear the whole of the gate out, and it wears a pit in the middle of the bowl, and the bottom of the stick will get worn off. And then there are these two things called, we call them gears. They're actually called gear links because they link the movement of the stick to some gears on the side, and the slots in the gear links will wear out. So everything gets bored out by the joystick because partly because the materials are so cheap, and because there's friction and there's no lubrication. So I had that satisfying experience as a child, playing Nintendo 64, and, back then the sticks weren't all worn out, and it was just you could get into a flow state really easily. You weren't focusing on your equipment while you were playing. And then later when I got older, one of the things that really brought me back to Nintendo 64 was the Smash Remix ROM hack. Um, so basically my friends and they played Smash in college, Smash 64 in college, all like, you know, they had a house, they all lived together, and they would play it like every single day, and they got really good at it. And I lived far away. I went to chiropractic school and I lived in a different city, but I would come back and visit them, and I would play. I used to play them too when I was younger, and I could whoop them when I was younger, but they had gotten so much better. And I always had this secret desire to be able to play at their level. And so now we're all out of school and we're in the same we live in the same town and so we started meeting every once in a while and playing Smash. And then Smash Remix came out and that really made us really want to play. And my friend who was like he was always the best Smash 64 player. He could beat anybody in the house. He would play everybody at his dorm. He's just amazing. He still is. And he would pull out this trash bag that was full of Nintendo 64 controllers. And he'd say, "All right, pick your weapon." And I would I would pick something out of there and I would always try to find a good one. And I always noticed that he kept picking the same one. And one day I was like, we were playing and he was beating us like usual. And I picked his up and I was like, man, yours is so much better. What's like, this is not fair. So that's when I was motivated to get us all on the same playing field. And so I started trying different aftermarket joystick boxes, the module as people call them. I didn't even go to the OEM clone ones. I just used some GameCube clones at first, and I read some reviews, and they looked decent, and people said they worked well. Well, when we tried to play Smash, it was not even close. The the ranges are quite different. Um, the just the feel in general, it doesn't move the same. Um, the restrictor gate, which is that octagon structure on the outside of the controller that restricts movement, it's not even in the same shape. On those, it's an equilateral octagon, and the N64 restrictor gate is actually like the diagonals are a little bit bigger, so it's like a big square and then a little diamond that makes the cardinals. So that wasn't the same, and we would find that we played a little better with those. Um, Me and the other guy who would try to beat my best friend, and we played better, but we still would mess up at key moments when, it was like, "Oh, I messed up," and then he would get a stock from that, so, um, that wasn't satisfying, so that kept me going. So then I moved on to, I watched some YouTube videos about Kish bent parts, which are, they're more like aftermarket parts, they're injection molded. The only issue with Kish bent, they're really inexpensive, which is great, and they're a great replacement parts still, I still consider them great for casual players, and, so I fixed all of our controllers with Kish bent parts. Then I found that that was a lot closer to OEM, and it was really good for a while, but I still found them to be a little bit loose, there was still some looseness, and it wasn't quite like the original, like, new feel, but better because the ranges matched and you were using the original restrictor gate. I was doing that for a while, and then I found Linus's project, which is SteelStix64. Bought some bowls from him, which were made out of stainless steel, and that significantly improved everything. And he had the caps too, this joystick caps, which you could use that would change the grip of the top of the joystick. And what I was starting to see is now there was a not only was there a potential to recreate the old experience, but there was a potential to make that old experience new and better. Like the same things you like about it, but even better. So with Linus's part, the bowl really made everything much, much smoother. I learned how to make some mod sticks from Linus's website, and I made a couple mod sticks for my friends and put some caps on them, and they really like they what was cool, it was also cool that we it was a way to express friendship, like, it was a way that we could, playfully compete with each other, that I could kind of like blow their minds with something from their childhood that they really enjoyed, that they never thought was even possible or that anyone cared enough to do. So then I also found, I think he goes by L Man. His name's Nam Lee, I think his name is really. Um, and he had a Shapeways, and he was making, the gear links out of brass and 3D printed resin, which I thought was really cool because that would increase the durability of those. On his Shapeways page, he mentioned that you had to polish the inner slot of that sometimes because there's a little bit of roughness in there. And so I started getting good at polishing the gear links, and I was basically just continuously upgrading our controllers that way. And in fact, one of my the one of the friends, it's 3 of us, the one that always tries to beat the guy with the trash bag full of controllers. We always try to team up against him. He still has a Linus Bowl and brass gears and that mod stick that I made, and he still uses it, and it still works perfectly for him. Linus, what he did was he showed a concept to everybody of modularity. So he showed because typically on the joystick, the bottom of the joystick is what wears off. Most of the other parts of the joystick don't really have any issues. And so he made everybody calls it the nib, almost like the nib of a pen. The nib part wears off. So Linus made a pad out of Teflon. That was a huge innovation that I didn't think anyone had ever thought about. Ever since that innovation, everybody has done some kind of a replaceable pad, which I think is absolutely a must in any of these durable stick projects. Another thing he did was, obviously the caps, which you can change those out with other caps. Some people like extra grip. Some people like a little bit smoother. Some people have softer skin on their thumbs. Some people have like rough callous skin. And the amount of change of grip, that's a huge innovation as well. At the beginning, when we were using Kish bent sticks, you had an OEM like feel, but everybody who I introduced the caps to, everybody preferred having their own cap that they could change out, and everybody always preferred more grip. So I think those were 2 huge innovations that he did, and every stick project since then has followed those 2 things. They have, modular cap design and the replaceable nib for the bowl contact. So, okay, I had so much fun making controllers for all of my friends. We all had one that was really nice. I just had this drive to keep doing it. So I would make a controller that I thought was really nice, some of Linus's parts and some of Elman's parts, and I would put those on eBay and sell them. And I was always very surprised at how much they would sell for. It showed me that there was a lot of love still for the Nintendo 64, and I wasn't just alone. I felt like my friends and I were just a small isolated cluster of people that actually still played it. Um, so it just showed me that there was a lot of love for it and a lot of demand for it as well. I probably made maybe 3, 4 eBay controllers. I just had fun doing that, and eventually what I was noticing is Linus's parts would sell out immediately, so he wasn't able to meet demand. Nam Lee's Shapeways shop was doing pretty well, and he just abruptly took it down and started his own website, which was cool. I thought, "All right, let's see what he makes. I'm excited." And he was selling some resin parts on his own website. Wasn't selling anything from Shapeways or anything that was remotely similar. And so I found him I think I messaged him through Shapeways and I asked him, "Hey, like, um, are you gonna make anything else with, with metal? Love to see more metal stuff. I'd love to buy some from you." I mean, I had fun making all this stuff. I was buying nylon sticks from him as well. And we would take the nylon sticks and put Linus's caps on them, which I found to be extremely durable and good. And Num Lee replied that he thought they weren't good enough. He didn't like them, and I think maybe I'm not sure what was going on, but maybe certain people who didn't have maybe they weren't so handy with power tools and things couldn't post process his parts to make them usable. and maybe he was getting some bad feedback from people, and it was discouraging him, so he took everything down. I thought, "You know what? I really liked Namli's parts. I did like them, and I thought they were good, and I wanted to I wanted to recreate them. If I could, I wanted to make them available to people." I ended up getting some 3D scans done of the parts, and I got a really nice caliper, and I measured everything, and I started learning how to 3D model and started making models. And I have a patient of mine who's a chiropractic patient who was he has a 3D printer, and he 3D printed some parts for me. They were okay. His 3D printer was an FDM printer, which uses filament to make a print. And the layer heights are pretty thick, so there's not a there's not good enough resolution, but we did make some sticks that actually worked, but they were my friend who had the trash bag full of controllers, he has giant hands. I'd say, "Alright," I was so proud of my first joystick. I let him try it out, and I was like, "Alright, this thing," because I was trying it. My hands aren't that big, they're kinda average, and, like, within 2 movements of the joystick, it was broken. He just snapped it right off. So, I was like, "Man, I gotta find some more durable options." I started doing some research with different companies. I looked at Shapeways, and at first I was trying to go local as much as possible. I was using a local company to do 3D printing, and they were doing a great job, but the employees that were working for them changed hands, and the quality started suffering, pretty quickly. After getting some scans done on my controller parts and making some models, and testing them with the FDM printer and finding that they were okay enough to work, um, I posted some models on Shapeways, and, I wasn't trying to get any attention. I was just like I just wanted to, like, make them available to people. And, I got several people messaging me about, the parts and asking me different questions. And some people asked me if they thought I would like to make parts out of metal, which, I eventually, started making, the gear links out of metal again because I thought those were a great part, and, I didn't see anything wrong with them whatsoever, so I had them up there. Um, and I was I got a little bit of, negative feedback from certain people. I thought maybe Nam Lee didn't want me to have things on Shapeways. I felt bad about it because I respected him a lot and still do. And, I was getting some flack from various people on Discord about it, and, so I took it down for a little bit. I didn't wanna upset anybody. Um, but then, I was like, "Man, the thing about it is that there's always opinions, and certain people will say something's bad, certain people will say something's good. Ultimately, there's no right answer, but each person can choose for themselves." And so I decided that I would let the people that liked those kinds of parts to choose for themselves if they wanted to access them. And, I would just do my best to try to make them as good as possible, as good as I possibly could. There's a never-ending amount of improvement that you can give a part, um, and no 2 parts are the same as well. But basically, perfection is like an asymptote that you're always approaching, but you're never there. You can always improve it. And, over the last several years, I've just been constantly trying to approach perfection, knowing that I'll never get there, but doing my best to make it so. I really like to fix things, and I like to see things persisting. Like, I like to see machines lasting a long, long, long time. And I do this with everything that I own. Like, I have a cell phone that I've had. Um, it's not the exact same unit, but it's the same. I've had the same model of cell phone for 10 years, and I've learned how to take it all apart, put it all back together. I learned how to replace parts in it. So what I like about the Nintendo 64 joystick is that everything inside is very simple and modular. So you can take it all apart, you can see all the parts, and you can very obviously see what's wrong with it and troubleshoot it. I mean, just like any mechanical system, it's difficult to troubleshoot, but with our community that we've created, we can help people troubleshoot things and troubleshoot it, find the wrong part, replace it, put it all back together, and it still works. And these things are 30 years old now, 25, 30 years old, and they can persistently they can last for years and years. And the newer things that people make are just everything is so tiny. There's all these things that are soldered together. It's impossible to open it. It's impossible to take it apart without destroying it. So what I love about it is that you can take it apart, put it all back together, still works. You can modify, you can use different parts, different materials. Um, I think it's an amazing mechanical system, and I think it's better than anything out there. But that's just my opinion. Since I was playing Smash a lot, I was very interested in helping the Smash community. Um, so that's where I started developing like the slim sticks. Like Nam Lee was the one that made that thing first. He made slim sticks first, but he wasn't selling them anymore. He wasn't selling them on his website. Wasn't selling them on Shapeways. I ended up buying some of his slim sticks that he was selling on his website, and the resin that he used was really brittle. Um, so I ended up making some out of nylon. So I was playing around with different um, because the slim stick is basically for those that don't know, the slim stick allows the joystick to go farther than it normally would, slightly farther, which allows some different advantages in Smash 64. And this since the stick is slimmer, it's more likely to snap off. It's more thin. There's less material. So I was very interested in making parts for Smash players. I didn't realize how many other communities there were. I thought Smash was all there was at first. A lot of people messaged me via Shapeways, and we would communicate loosely. They were showing me all this whole world that I didn't even know was there. There was like Super Mario 64. That's a huge community. Um, and there's like Zelda and Banjo Kazooie and all these other games that I didn't even know people still played. Um, but originally I was focused on Smash 64. I chose bronze. Well, first of all, I just like that material. It has a very ancient vibe. That was the first real metal that humans used to make things like swords and armor and shields and things. And bronze is very corrosion resistant. It's also very inexpensive to make, and you can cast bronze. And in fact, the first type of casting that humans did was called lost wax casting, and that's what I used to make my bronze parts at the beginning. I wasn't personally doing them. At first, I was paying a local company to do lost wax casting, and eventually, I started using other companies like Shapeways to do the lost wax casting. Um, I did experiment with Shapeways a little bit, and I was getting a lot of there was like this initial stigma to using Shapeways because of what Nam Lee was saying about it. He said it wasn't accurate enough, it wasn't good enough. And while I agree with him, it's not as accurate as CNC made parts. Um, I was just going along with what everyone said. I wasn't checking my own experience. I wasn't trying shapeways at the beginning. Um, so I used I used this local company for quite a long time, and they were doing a great job. And just like with anything, there's variation, but casting, there's always variation. So um, I was noticing certain variations that were kind of intolerable that would make it so that I couldn't just sell a part individually. I'd have to like sell an assembly that worked together with itself. Um, so my original joystick was made out of bronze, and the very first ones I made, I was kind of using Linus's design a little bit. I was used to what seeing what his was like, but I was just using what was accessible to me. I didn't have a CNC lathe. I didn't have access to large amounts of money to do a CNC project. So I was just using what I had available, and I had 3D printed nylon, and I had the the bronze casts. So I was making the joysticks, and then out of the bronze, and post processing them in my office in the back room of my office, which I use as kind of a shop. And I was drilling and tapping and um, polishing things back there. And I was using the original stick I made had a nylon nib in the bottom of it. And I found, like, with Nam Lee's joysticks, the nylon was not harmful to the bowl, and it was durable, which I found great. So, my first ones were that's what my server calls the V1 joystick. It's just it's very much like Linus's or, Houdini's joystick with kind of a flat bottom, a hole in the bottom, and a nib stuck in that hole. So I started there. And I actually sold a controller that had a full bronze module, um, that I kind of advertised it on my server to kind of kickstart the project because I knew there was a lot of demand for good quality Nintendo 64 controllers. And I knew that the community really wanted me to step forward and help. So I put that controller on eBay. It had like a painted shell and um, full bronze inside, and it had dyed buttons. It looked really cool, and it worked really well. It had really good benchmarks, and we sold that controller on eBay. Somebody generously bid about $1,100 for it, and that really kicked off the project. So I was doing stuff with at first I was doing stuff just with my own money, paychecks, and I was spending a lot of my own money, to be honest, because there's a lot of um, when you're doing R&D, there's a lot of things that you try that just don't work. You go down rabbit holes that are quite expensive, and then you end up saying, "Well, that's not a good idea," and then you go down a different rabbit hole, and I went down a lot of rabbit holes and tried a lot of different things and found what I thought worked at the time. So one thing I think about with my parts is, especially at the beginning, and with casting, you have more flexibility in design. So, like, for example, I had in the cast, I had words like they were not engraved, but they were in the cast, in the model, um, on top of the joystick that people could find like an Easter egg. And I was hoping that someday somebody would dig this thing up and find this thing like an artifact and think, "Wow, what does that mean? Wow, what is he trying to say there?" But with the environmentally friendly thing, one of the strategies I use is to try to make things last as long as possible. So, um, in modern manufacturing, everything is so cheaply made and difficult to repair and easy to break. You know, you break something, you can't fix it. What are you going to do with it? You have to throw it in the garbage or recycle it somehow. And all of that either imposes a lot of wasteful energy to that person that owns it who's trying to do the good thing and recycle it, or it just ends up being toxic waste. So a lot of electronics have a lot of heavy metals like lead, cadmium, mercury, and things that end up in the water and um, polluting the soil, etc. So one of my strategies to environmental friendly parts is just using non-toxic materials if possible, um, and making for sure that it lasts as long as possible. Um, with my packaging, everything I use in the packaging, it's basically if somebody just threw it out their window of their car, it could turn into soil. I want it to because I'm not expecting them to recycle, and that's what I feel like. I feel like everybody who makes packaging should expect that the monkey's going to peel the banana, eat the banana, and throw it down on the ground. So um, I think the packaging is a huge thing as well. There's so much little wrappers and so much plastic that ends up when you buy a product. It just you open a box and then you have this pile of plastic that's left over. Not to mention the thing that could break in a couple years. Another strategy I employ that I feel tries to make it environmentally friendly is to make it as functional as function the best as possible. So you could get something. I could buy one of those GameCube modules for the N64 controller. Oh wow, this thing really sucks. What's somebody immediately compelled to do? Either give it away, throw it in the recycle bin, or trash it. So that if it's not functional, then it's immediately trash. Another strategy is to try to make it beautiful if possible. So with the bronze joysticks, I would put the little Easter eggs and almost make it like an artifact that somebody could find in the ground, or kind of expose a layer of mystery in something that seems technical and mundane, or like something that was engineered. Art, people love art, and they don't tend to want to throw those things away. So and people also, if they can't hang on to a piece of art, they'll tend to pass it on to someone else that they love. There's a tendency when somebody does something great to try to emulate them. So when I first started making caps, I was making them out of just plain nylon. Basically, I just emulated Linus's design. He had like a knurled, it had straight knurling all around the outside of the cap, and I had it 3D printed like that. And I was using those for a while, and none of them were as good as Linus's. So I just tried a whole bunch of, just like I said earlier, lots of rabbit holes. I tried different materials. I tried that material, and I was like, it sat on my bench for a long time, like a long time. I I was focused on the one that was quite like Linus's design, and at the beginning, I was giving things away um, just to get feedback. I wanted feedback because I could have an opinion about something, but whether my opinion doesn't matter. It it matters a little bit, but everybody's opinion matters. So I just started throwing different things in, and I was running out of caps, and they were sitting there, and I was like, well, I better process these. So I made them into the caps, and I started putting them in people's boxes. People started asking for more of them. Other people that were not related to those, or they were maybe friends with those other people, said, "Oh, I want some of those too." I started making more of them, and basically, just the feedback from the community was what made them what they are. I didn't. They were an accident, in my opinion. So I would love to still be making bronze joysticks. With casting, there is inconsistency. I couldn't get the same kind of quality every time. It was kind of random. There was there was some jitter between too big and too small and various dimensions on the part. The cast bronze is 10% tin, 90% copper. That's it. So both of those are non-toxic metals. And when I started thinking about the reason why I started thinking about CNC, which the new sticks are CNC made, is because of the accuracy that you're able to get with CNC. It's very repeatable. You can get within a fraction, you can get within hundredths of a millimeter of accuracy and consistency, versus I had about tenths of millimeters of deviation with the casting. It was still good while it lasted, and it was a good starting point for me. It was good to help me. The bronze was very flexible because I could change a design, and it wasn't expensive. I could take apart, test it, you know, get some rough design tips from that. But now that I have the design more figured out, the CNC is what I need because it's I know exactly what I want it to be. And so I switched materials because I was going to use bronze actually, but when you use for the bronze that you cut on CNC, uh, someone pointed this out on a maker's Discord server. His name's Griffin. I'll say his screen name. So he's like an engineer or something. He's a really smart guy, and he said, CNC bronze has lead in it, and I was like, oh, didn't know that. And then that made me question whether or not my sticks have lead in them. They don't. They're 90 copper, 10 tin. So the casting bronze doesn't have lead in it, but they call it free machining bronze, has lead in it. So does free machining brass. Sometimes they'll use other metals that they usually use like a soft, melting point metal that acts as a lubricant while the part is being cut. So lead lubricates, it melts under the friction of that turning rod, and it lubricates the cutting tool. And that's why, like, if you buy PEX parts, you know, they have the brass fittings, that they'll say lead free on them. They used those are machined, usually on CNC, and, they machine them on a free machining brass that doesn't have lead in it. But typical cheap free machining brass has lead in it, so that's why they have to say it's lead free. So, I don't use bronze because I can use a free machining bronze, but it's like $400 for a bar that's like, 10 feet long, and a piece of stainless is like $40. And, um, stainless, it's harder, um, and, you can harden it with heat, you can polish it. You can polish bronze too. Bronze is softer, but I loved bronze because bronze is self-lubricating. The tin in the bronze acts kind of like the lead in free machining, uh, metals like brass and bronze. The I used I loved bronze because they always make bearings out of bronze. Bronze, it resists frictional wear really well, and it's self-lubricating. But now I use steel because of the cost of the bar and what I can do to the steel. I don't like to be the same as everybody else. I don't like that I'm using the same material. But I plan to deviate. That's just a starting point. So I had the V1 joystick, which had that was sort of emulating Linus's design with the nylon nib. Then I moved to what we called V2, which it was very much like Retex joystick, where it had a hollow that could hold a ball bearing that was made out of Teflon or Delrin in the end of the joystick as the nib, and that design works fine and great. What made me deviate from it was when I was making the V2 joysticks, I was making them out of bronze, and the bronze was deviating in size. So what I was noticing was the the height of the joystick would be slightly deviating. So what I wanted was for I would design the part, compensate for the casting, the shrinkage that happens during casting. I wanted it to come out ready to work, like just basically just drill and tap it and you know send it to the customer or somebody who wanted to use it to play. And my goal obviously was to make them not trash, I wanted it to be as perfectly functional as possible. I wanted people to cherish what they got. The deviation in height was, um, what I was noticing, some of them were too tall, and when the nib was sticking out too far, the stick would get jammed in diagonals. That's what stopped me. Like, I made several small runs of the V2 joystick, and those did fine, and I made modules out of them, and they worked really well, but that deviation was bothersome, and also the bowl was made out of bronze as well, and that would deviate just a tiny bit, and fractions of millimeters could change the feel of the joystick quite dramatically. So I thought, "Man, how am I gonna solve this problem?" This is and I've already created these joysticks too that are not quite the right size. I was like, "I don't want these to become garbage. I wanna make these usable." What I would do is when I would encounter a problem like that, I would think about it for a while, and then just do my best to forget about it. Go home, go to sleep, go outside, spend some time with my wife, hang out with friends, and then maybe sit down, get a few ideas, draw something, forget about it. And I let time go by. I wouldn't try to like latch on to that problem and just hold on to it and figure it out. That never works. Eventually I can't remember exactly when I had the idea, but there were several like presentations that kind of opened up doors in my mind to what was possible. And Jay Waterman, everybody knows him. He said he's always throwing ideas out there. He's just like full of ideas. He's never offended if I don't use an idea of his, but he likes to share, and I really am grateful for his ideas. And he just sh- showed me this material. And I was racking my brain. I was thinking about going back to the V1 at this point, and because I was able to with the V1, I was able to file the bottom of it off a little bit and modify the size so it was just the right height. I was really thinking about going back to V1, and so Jay Waterman says, "Hey, look at this material. It's a Teflon rod." And I was like, "Oh, that's cool." And I was just like, "Oh, great." And I was like, "Yeah, I wonder if I could cut that with CNC. I don't know what I'm gonna do with that." I just put it on the back burner in my mind. And then um, I was focused on either the ball nibs or the nylon nibs, and I was thinking about a way to like modify that height, and for the user to be able to modify that easily. And I drew up some pictures. I still have the notepad page that I drew it on, but I was thinking of somehow because that stick is very small. There's a very small amount of material there, and I was thinking of how I could do that without making it too weak and tending to break. I drew up some pictures, and I had a ball nib, and I had drawn a screw that was modifying the height of the ball nib. Thought about it for a while, and then I was like, "Oh, yeah, that material that Jay Waterman mentioned." I was like, I bet I could use that." And so I bought some of it, cut some of it up into small pieces, and I modified some of those V2s that were basically useless. I drilled them all the way through and tapped them with a small tap, and I put a small screw in there and, made the first V3 out of a bronze V2, and, I put it in a controller, and I drilled out the end so that the nib could go deeper in, so it wasn't, like, always the same height. It could actually be too short, like, you could make the nib, like, too short and make it feel loose, kind of, and then you could kind of, like, tweak it until it got to the kind of the right height, and when I did that, it was like it just blew my mind. I was like, "Oh my gosh, this is it. This is it." It was like, and this happened many times throughout the project where I would put parts together and I would put it in a joystick and I would move it, and I was like, and I just instantly knew it was good. I was like, "Oh." The nib came out of that problem. It came out of a problem that I had with the bronze cast joysticks. If I wasn't doing bronze cast joysticks, that nib never would have came about. It never would have happened. And since bronze is soft, I can easily modify it, drill it out, tap it. It's not so hard that it's difficult to work with. I think plastic has its place. If there's if there are replaceable parts on the plastic stick, or if it's recyclable, or it lasts a really long time. So I was using the nylon sticks, and when I was buying them from El Man, I never was able to wear one out, and I didn't play a ton. I would just play, like, once every few weeks with my friends, but I played for a full year with a nylon stick with lubrication, and it felt just like it did when I put it in, so I thought, "This is a good material." That particular kinda nylon can be recycled. You have to go through a specific avenue, and that's why I was gonna open it up, because I was gonna basically accept parts that people wore out of nylon and, um, recycle them for them. I think there's a place for it if they're recyclable. I think it should be recyclable and or long lasting and or have replaceable parts that wear. So, I don't see anything wrong with a non-recyclable plastic joystick that has replaceable high wear points. In terms of, like, design and, functionality, as long as the part the geometries are right, um, it can be a good part. And also the interactions of different materials. So, if you have, like, in the original N64 controller, everything was ABS, and it's all the same material, and the same material rubbing against the same material exerts more friction than two differing materials, especially if one of them's plastic and one of them's metal. I like the metal joystick in combination with plastic gears and a plastic gate, and the wear point on the bottom being plastic and the bowl being metal. So you have all differing material interfaces. Or I like plastic joystick, metal gate, metal gears, metal bowl. So you're not having two materials that are the same. Originally, I was making all bronze, which works if you use the proper lubrication. But personally, I don't prefer that the way that feels. It doesn't feel as good to me. But some people like it, and some people like the idea of having an entirely metal joystick.
Once you get their products out there, how does it feel to see people do great things in their personal games with them? Like, how does the satisfaction from that feel for you?
That's right here. You just made me smile. That's like one of the best parts. That's really it.
It's
I love to
wonderful.
see people's success. Definitely, yeah. I'm very surprised. And very pleased with the friendships that I have developed with other people, and also that other people have developed around this project and throughout the community. When I was making my bronze parts, I was kind of watching the retech project. I was doing my best to help support that project if I could. I would try to give them feedback or support or what have you. But I noticed on their server there was just so much bashing and people were just bashing each other. They were bashing the the maker, they were bashing the mod, bashing each other. It was just like nasty. Everything was just so it was trash. It's like it was like trash on the inside leads to trash on the outside, and what I've tried to create with this project is more of a pure experience for people that they can feel good about. Something that makes them feel good inside. And peace and goodness on the inside leads to peace and goodness on the outside in interactions with people in the server, in the community. And I think it sets an example for how to behave with each other in that we're supportive of each other and when other people are successful, we succeed as well in various unpredictable ways. What I had mentioned earlier is I really like to fix things. Like my day job is that I'm a chiropractor, so I'm helping people to fix their bodies. I like to fix broken things that end up broken in our home, or I fix broken things for friends. So the troubleshooting aspect of our community is really beautiful. I feel it's kind of an interesting puzzle when somebody presents a problem with maybe their joystick or their Nintendo 64 system. The more familiarity you have with a particular system, whether it's the human body or whether it's just an electronic system, simple like the N64, um, the more you can see it in your mind and go through the problem in your mind and watch it, you know, go through the different layers of what has to function correctly and find where that is messed up. And it's really fun and beautiful to see not just me helping other people, but lots of different people jumping in and trying to help. It happens all the time on my server, and I just really love that. There's just um, a desire to help. Almost every single problem we've come up with that's been presented has been solved if people are persistent enough to keep trying to fix it. Just I can't think of any, and I won't name any specific examples, but I'm thinking of repeated troubleshooting attempts and some that were due to flaws in my designs that people presented that I would they were very gracious about, and they weren't bashing me, they weren't bashing other people or the project because of the flaws. Everything can be improved. There's a never-ending amount of improvement, but they would calmly present issues, and then we would try to troubleshoot them. And then if we would come to the conclusion that, hey, this part needs to be changed a little bit, I'm totally open to changing it and making it better. All of the feedback, all of the troubleshooting, to me, it's just been a beautiful experience. I interact with a lot of people that are making things, and I'm always encouraging them to do their best. And I want to help them. I want them to make good things. Some of the things that are being made right now, I can't talk about. So I want them to have the authority of revealing what they're doing. What I can reveal is just like that I'm excited for what they're doing and that I know that they're doing the right thing in the way that they're doing it. For the TaoStyx64 project, I'm excited to see V3 joysticks get into a lot of hands. I want to see what happens. Like I'm already seeing speedrunners getting better times a lot of the people that have V3s right now, there's only a couple dozen out there right now, but I've seen some good times come out of them, and I'd love to see that, not just my parts, but other parts that other makers are making. I'd like to see that pushing excellence, making the excellence, more, um, magnanimous. I'd like to see their achievements more and more superhuman with what they're able to do, and not able to, not having interference with the interface, the controller interface with the system. I'd like to see all that interface, that static gone. I'd like to see them actualizing their full potential, whether it's with my parts or with anyone else's. So I'm most excited about the future of the project with just what people do with what I make. It's not necessarily about what I make. Another thing maybe I'm excited about is getting a little bit more involved with making parts for Smash players. I made Slim Sticks for a while, and I tried playing with them myself. And I personally, with Smash 64, I didn't really like them. And my overall preference was just the OEM size and shape, basically. But I do want to cater to Smash players, so I do plan to make some metal Slim Sticks. And I won't be making them out of steel. I'll use a different material. I think I've already announced on my server that there'll be an aluminum, anodized aluminum, so I'm pretty excited about that. And, Unibiker is a local guy who's a machinist that I use, and he made my bowls, and he's going to make the aluminum Slim Sticks, hopefully in the next, few months, so I'm really excited about that as well. Just like I said earlier about the Retech server, how it was so there was so much trash, hatred to each other. If people don't feel good on the inside, they're not gonna have peace on the outside. If they don't have peace on the inside, they're not gonna have peace on the outside. So a lot of the messages that I put in the packages, they involve helping giving little breadcrumbs to help people to find peace inside themselves. And when I say find it, I don't mean you're looking for something that you don't have. You're not trying to create something that you don't have. You're just noticing something that's already there. If you notice any conflict outside yourself or inside yourself, look for the peace that's already there. And what you'll notice is that your entire life on the outside will change. The outer circumstances will start to reshape themselves naturally to that which looks like peace, but is not something that you predicted. And if you want to be a high performing anybody, athlete, maker, doctor, professional, whatever it is, take care of the basics. So take care of your body, eat really healthy. When you're eating healthier, you're taking better care of the environment. The food that you eat, the healthiest food is the best for the environment. So you're taking care of the inside and the outside at the same time. Have good relationships with people that you love. Tell people that you love them. And also go outside. Gaming is fun, but don't do it too long. Be healthy. Be happy.
And the peace that remains within my mind, I feel inside as the sound of silence. In lucid dreams I feel at home, and every person dreams.